Hello guys and welcome to this second video of the week number 9. So as I mentioned before, this week we're going to deal a little bit with warm-ups, warmers, icebreakers, you name them. At this level of your career, I think that you're already familiar with them, right? Um, so, well, I don't know how you have managed those so far. I guess that you have dealt with that before, you have already taken practicum, you have prepared lessons, etc. Right? So I am assuming that it's not the first time that you are going to be in contact with this. Now for this particular subject, and in general with my practice as teachers, my strong belief is that the warm up or the icebreaker or whatever you want to call it has to have a connection with the content of the class. Yes? Something that I see very often is that teachers prepare really creative and many times really fun are icebreakers and warmers, but normally they don't have to do much or sometimes at all with what they present, right? So probably they do a matching game or something really kinesthetic, such as running around or dancing or jumping, or throwing an object or something like that. That may be really fun, and that's good. And if it works for you, great, right? But my personal belief, and again in my experience, I think is that they work much better if they are connected to what you do. Yes, so take that into account. The word maps that we are going to design, that we're going to use for this class, should have a direct connection with what you're going to present in your lesson. Okay, so they either are useful for introducing some vocabulary, for practicing some of the pre-concepts that you require, maybe for pre-teaching a certain idea, for modeling some grammar that you're required to use later on in your class. Maybe these warm-ups are to get to know certain things about the text that you're going to use, such as the author, or maybe some of the background, or maybe you're going to use that in order to for example, describe the setting or make the student familiar with the setting of the story. If let's say that it's a sequel, so to remember a little bit about the previous book, or what you taught in the previous lesson. Maybe the use is the fact that you are going to teach the pronunciation of certain words that are going to be essential for any other activities. I mean, anything. Yes, I have given you already like 8 or 9 examples from the top of my head. But you can think about a lot of different uses, many different variables. But the point is that such warm-up, such activity that you are going to do to start the class, well, they may be useful for you in the long time. Not something that it's fun and interesting, but completely disconnected to what you're later on presented. Because generating a connection is going to be difficult, or somehow it's going to make your other work look boring, right? Like maybe you have had the experience of students who are really eager and waiting really, every class really anxiously for your warm-up, because that is like the fun part. But then when you get into the definition and the class itself, that it's actually probably the most important, they are not really connected, and they feel somehow isolated, and that's it. Yes, well, at least they like one part of your class. That's something good. But it may be an act of cannibalism, basically cannibalizing what you're going to do later on and make it look more boring than your warm-up, right? So hopefully everything is like connected in there, Also remember what we studied at the beginning and see that sometimes we studied or we remember narrations better than concepts because we tend to remember, to have memories for connected issues or connected components rather than isolated ideas. So if you yourself make your class disconnected by not having any resonance between the first part and the other part and the final part, well, not such a good idea, right? Well, now let's talk about duration or the length or the time that you are supposed to invest on your warmer, your warm up. Well, that really depends on you guys. It depends on the size of your class. It depends on what you want to achieve with such warm up. It depends on how complex is the activity, if it is competitive, if there is like a winner, if you're going to have any sort of process that is complex, such as, I don't know, moving chairs, such as maybe sticking certain things into the board, you know, like with tape. Sometimes we take time with that. We take time with that, and well, take into account all those aspects, right? What would I recommend that is no longer than 10 minutes? Yes, actually, if it can be less, well, better, because it's a warm up, an icebreaker, and something to make students somehow interested, like a hook, if you want to call it that way, in order to call their attention. Now, what happens usually with warm ups? That they extend, right? Let's imagine that it is competitive, there is a contest or something like that, and then everybody wants to pass, and if you don't pass everybody, like some of them, again, depending on their age or depending on their level, or if it's a school or a university or language center or anything like that, well, they will feel more or less inclined to put some pressure on you in order to extend this time. Yes, and if you had a warm up plan for 10 minutes and then it extends to 20 or sometimes 30 minutes because I know it was a lot of fun and you just let it go, well, you're going to start getting behind on the lesson somehow. And having fun is good, really great, and that's going to improve your image as a teacher, and that's fine. But eventually, if it happens a lot, it's not going to be really good for their learning and for the different things. Now, again, we're trying to plan a whole lesson that is somehow fun or somehow attractive for them, and the concept of fun is very subjective. But my point over here is that, well, if you're going to plan an activity that is about 10 minutes or 8 minutes or 5 minutes, whatever it is, try to keep your schedule. Try to maintain it. Try to look for creative ways to reduce the extreme necessity of participation. Let's say you can divide the class in a certain amount of groups, and each group is going to send a representative or something like that, and next time another, and that's it. Yes. So not everybody requires to pass at the same time. Let's imagine that during these warm-ups, you also divide the functions. So one person, I don't know, passes in order to do whatever he has to, speaking, writing on the board, selecting any cut and paste thing that he pastes over there. Well, whatever, right? And then some other people that may be in charge of speaking, some other people that may be in charge of writing. And this division of labor is going to help you analyze some strengths and weaknesses or opportunities to improve in the students. And at the same time, it's going to maximize your time. Yes? And as I mentioned, let's say that if in the first part of the class, we were going to mention that again in the next week. If in the first part of the class there was somebody with the task of writing or speaking or something like that, doing the warm-up, try to make him do something different in the rest of the class, during the main activities or in the main part of the lesson, something like that, okay? Um, well, that about the length or the duration of the thing. Mm, Now, what I'm going to do now, I'm going to briefly mention and briefly describe in very general way some of the warm-ups that I have used in the past and that some other, let's say, studies propose for specifically dealing with literature and language teaching, right? So the warm-ups for them. Now, let's imagine that you already have a warm-up that you created or that you have somehow learned along the way, and you use it a lot, and you told me, teacher, this is a warm-up that is really effective, people get really engaged and something like that. Well, that's a great option. You can adapt that, yes, so it can have some literary content and it serves a purpose like the one that we have already mentioned, right? The one of introducing a character, vocabulary, or settings, etc., right? So I'm going to give you some general examples of that. Um, Again, these are just some, and there are many. And taking into account that this is such a short activity, 10 minutes or 8 minutes during your class. So the idea is that I'm going to just explain some of them at a general level. Later on, where we are going to focus on the rest of the class, the development and some of the main explanations and methodologies, well, we're going to actually model some of those. I'm going to give you like some specific examples and you're going to do some assignments related to those. But here I'm just going to mention them, and later on, by the end of this video or the next, I don't know if I'm going to have the time for doing it, the ideas that you propose you round, okay? So here are a few. Some of them are basically about reading and writing. Some other are oral, somehow. Some of them are combined. Some of them are a little bit kinesthetic. Well, there are different things. Also, these are just general descriptions. Probably you can just adapt them and do different things, right? So first of them are, for example, scrambled letters. Yes, hopefully you have seen those. And it's when you have a word that has the letters in disorder, if you want to call it that way. Yes, they are disorganized somehow, and you're supposed to organize it. This is short. This is something that make you think. That may be fun for some. Yes, not for everybody, for sure, because there's a lot of things that are not necessarily fun for everybody. But it's challenging. That can be collective. Yes. So maybe if one of the kids is not so good for them, you can put them on a team and they all together can think better about it. This normally works really good as a time activity, such as like we have two groups. I give a marker to each one and they go to the board, and the first one to write the correct unscrambled word will get the point or something like that, right? Now, what can you do? Use scrambled letters or scrambled words for everything that we have all mentioned already, like the title of the story, characters in the story, places where the story takes place, values that the story promotes, descriptions, emotions, well, a lot of different things, right? Those are possibilities, right? Again, this can be combined with something kinesthetic, not only writing, but as I mentioned, running into the board, or maybe doing it with, which will take longer, but it's fun as well. Cutting out the words and disorganizing them, putting into a bag, and then trying to organize it. Do it in a digital way. Yes, nowadays we have to look for options during the pandemics. So there are some different web pages in which you can automatically scramble your own words or sentences even, and the web pages will help you doing that automatically, and you can do it in that way, for example, right? So think about all these different possibilities, because it's important. Well, the other ones that we can have are, for example, palindromes. Palindromes are words or somehow sentences sometimes that read in the same way from left to right and right to left. Think about Anna, double N, A-N-N-A, Anna, the name. So you can read it the same, left to right, Anna, or right to left, Anna, right? This is just a simple example. You can look online for palindromes and you can find 1,000. They're pretty common. Of course, the work over here, or like your task, will be to find some that are adaptive to what you're trying to do. Again, introduction of a character, moods, names, settings, etc. Right? This may be, let's say, a warm-up that present this to them and try to make some sort of game with it, or you can ask them to produce it, which of course is much more difficult. So you need to require to see if your let's say your students are willing, well, not willing, sorry, are able to do it according to their level, right? Because this can be frustrating for some of them, and well, maybe making them, inventing them, creating them may be a very difficult task, and you are trying to get their attention, not frustrating from the very beginning. So normally, if the class it has a let's say an intermediate or basic level, you can use palindromes, I would suggest, but ones that you either create yourself or that download from the internet, research, and they are able to recognize certain things related to it, right? You can, for example, help them associate images with the palindrome that you have. Well, there are a lot of different things. We have, for example, things such as collective creation and chronological organization. The first one, for example, helps or works really well with anticipation of the story. Remember that you are going to read what is the text about. I mean, you're going to read the text, or maybe they are going to read it, or you're going to present the text somehow in the, let's say, the main part of the lesson. So the warm-up can be like a way to anticipate. Yes, if they don't know, they can try and guess, right? So this is a typical activity where the first student start telling the story, like if he knew what was about it and what was about it, and based, for example, on the title, based, for example, on the cover of the book that usually have illustrations, based on some internal illustration inside the book, based on, I don't know, a clip that you showed them or something like that, right? So the first start, and then the other people continue the story. Now you can put or make some rules, for example, as to make this activity a little bit more dynamic. Yes, so usually people start with the kid over here and they follow in order, right? But you can do a lot of different things, such as you yourself as a teacher ask the next person, and it can be like the final person in the line, the person in the middle, or something like that. The same kid who is speaking, he can challenge another one in order for him or her to continue the story according to what he or she thinks goes on. You can put some rules, for example, as to not repeat certain words that he already used, let's say, for example, and that can be a grammar, for example, review. Okay, the second kid cannot repeat the same verbs that the first kid used, right? So this has like a double use. First of all, it guarantees attention because he will be like this, trying to see what the first kid is saying in order not to lose or something like that. And second, of course, reviewing categories, such as knowing what is a verb or an adjective or a noun or something like that, right? So that is about collective creation. There are a lot of different things that you can do. Again, well, sorry to repeat it, but important that you bear in mind. Remember everything related to what you're going to read. So these anticipated stories may be about characters, the whole story, a particular setting, well, whatever. You can talk about chronological organization. Yes. So, for example, you can give them the first paragraph and they are supposed to organize it. Again, you can do this digitally. You can do it with cutouts. You can do it simply by handing them a text and they will write it. Yes. So, it really depends on your group. Then again, you may not use a paragraph, but probably you can use images without text, or you can use images plus a little text. Yes, probably just a sentence, and that's it. What they can organize, the whole story, if that's convenient for you, maybe only the first part of the story. Well, I don't know, different things over there, right? We can talk about a game such Guess Who, right? And this Guess Who, you can do it with descriptions, yes, and of course this will require to have like a minimum knowledge about the book that you're going to read. Yes, so imagine there is a very popular author or a very popular story, or a story that has a movie adaptation, so everybody knows it, even if they have never read it. Yes, that's it. So you have this Guess Who thing, in which it can be just orally descriptive, in which you can read it yourself and they guess, in which you can bring them, and that of course will require more materials and time, but it's a possibility. I have done it in the past. Like you create this little board with the possibilities, and you have this game of does the person has a mustache? Does the person have blonde hair? Is she tall? Well, etc. Right? These different things. You can also make a guessing games, for example, with truth and lies. Yes, let's imagine that you say, I'm going to say 3 sentences, 2 of them are true and 1 is a lie. Yes, and you can provide information about the book and they are supposed to guess that, or they can create the sentences themselves. So you can show them pictures and say, this character, all of the characters are from here, so there is one that does not correspond, tell me who is it, who do you imagine. All of this based in a pre-written exercise, based on the book, based on the title, based on an image of the book, based on some previous knowledge that they have. Well, a lot of these different things, right? You can do a lot of these different predicting games, with different things. Yes, predicting how it's going to end, predicting who's going to be the protagonist from a set of pictures. Well, a lot of different things, and you can gamify that. Yes, and just giving you general ideas, and of course, like your function is to try to think about that in your books. Yes. Now again, you can make more kinesthetic things such as throwing the typical things that every English teacher does, like throwing darts, using balloons somehow, anything, guys. Yes, but that is somehow connected. Yes, even the most disconnected game can be adapted and being meaningful if you put a little mind into it. Yes, so think about remember that once I had this group of kids who were telling me that they would like to play these musical chairs things. Yes, like the ones in which there's music, and when the music is off, so everybody has to sit down, and I have to retire the chair. And everybody likes to running and jumping and pushing each other and killing each other in the process, right? But then I said, well, how can I do something like that? It has nothing to do with English. I think that was English that time. I was an English teacher back then. So what to do? Yes, and later on what I came up with was to read them a story, and every time I mention a particular category, they should sit down. While they read the story and pay attention, to it attentively. So whatever I said something, they had to sit down. Yes, so it could be a name of a character, or it could be a verb, or it could be a description, or it could be a narration, etc. And you could like sort of um, make the activity more and more difficult every time that you are going to like retie a chair. And you can do it in that way, like progressively starting from a simple word such as a name after something more complicated such as description, verbs, nouns, adjectives, anything like that, right? And you read the story to them, and that is another way in which you can anticipate certain parts of the story. So, well, guys, that was it about the warm-ups. I know that there are like 1,000 more. I'm just giving you some very general things. So, what is the assignment for this week? Okay, you can, as usual, work in groups of 4 people. If you want, 3, 2, 1, as you prefer. Please select one of the materials that you're going to use. Okay, not the books, but the materials that you're going to use. There are 4 people, so it can be, I would recommend that you work in the definitive groups that you are going to work in the project. Yes, and select either one of your books, yes, and a fragment of it or whatever, or a new material that can be a short tale, short story, or something like that, for the project, right? Also select one specific population. You tell me, teacher, we're going to do this warm-up for teens in a school, in a public school or private school, bilingual school, university, first level, second semester, intermediate, language center, something like that. Okay, so remember, the definite material that you're going to use, either one of you or all of you, and the population. Okay, if you change it for our next activity, it's fine, that's okay, but I wouldn't recommend that, as then eventually you will have to do that, the next one, for the final project. So I would recommend that you have a good chat before this and say, hey, we're going to try to use this and maintain this text for let's say the rest of the semester. But well, up to you. Anyway, if you have any other question, let me know. So after selecting the text, the material, and the population, you are going to do the warm-up. Yes, remember, please take into account in this warm-up you're going to introduce some parts of the story, some characters, some settings, some vocabulary, whatever, anything, but that must be related to eventually working with that story. Okay, please, you are going to create 2 warm-ups. Okay, and you're going to create all the material associated to it. So if you say, teacher, we're going to do some pictures, so in the file you attach the pictures that you're going to use. Yes, teacher, that we're going to use some scrambled letters. Okay, so use or mention over there the scrambled letters, and I mean create it. Until now, and even in the test, we were only describing. I will do a warm-up, right? I will do a memory game, okay, but you didn't have to include it. From now on, you have to, okay? So if you're going to do a memory game, you include the images and all that. You're going to do it in that way. So you're going to create 2 warm-ups, please. 2 warm-ups of about 10 minutes. And one must be for presential class. Imagine that you have your class in front of you. And the other one must be for a digital class or a virtual session like the ones that we are having, okay? So basically you prepare it, you explain it, and you put both in the same file, okay? That is basically what we're going to do. Remember, if you say that your warm-up will include images or materials or whatever, so please include that in the picture, in the file. So it can be pictures, it can be, again, if it's palindrome, so include the list of palindromes. If you're going to use the scrambled letters, well, put it over there, and of course put the correct version of it, and all these different things. Imagine that you're going to do something kinesthetic, such as the musical chairs that I mentioned. Well, so you include what is the criteria, what is it that you're going to do, what is the text that you're going to read, for how long. The description should be pretty good, okay, pretty clear, so I can understand exactly what you're going to do. The warm-ups, as I mentioned, can be from the ones that I propose or something new, okay, something that you come up with yourself. So thank you very much, guys. Have a great day and see you around. Bye bye. See you. Hugs.